So it's my privilege to be the co-I on the Expanded Interiors project, and I'm the archaeological lead for the project. And one of the questions I think that becomes very important for me is, how does an archaeologist best contribute to what is a fine art-led project? How do we work most effectively to advance Catrin's vision of what Expanded Interiors should deliver? Now, the source of inspiration for many artists through the years has been the extraordinary decoration of many of the houses of Pompeii and Herculaneum. That's no surprise. They continue to have a power to excite and enthrall now. What we're interested in here is not just drawing on that marvellous artistic tradition, but also thinking about interior space. What defines a space as an interior? Well, of course, part of what defines it is the range of activity that takes place within it. And from an archaeological point of view, we're always going to be interested in the way in which those spaces are occupied, the way they're used, the way that material culture is actually employed within those spaces. And so one of our thoughts when we approach this archaeologically tends to be to think about context. Objects in context, in this case the context of interior space. For Expanded Interiors, we're working on two different buildings, the House of the Beautiful Courtyard in Herculaneum and the House of the Cryptoporticus in Pompeii. Now, both of these have long and complex histories of investigation. They are also both celebrated for their interior decoration. They are also both extremely well suited to the installation of fine art display of Catrin's installations. Now, it's widely assumed, and wrongly assumed, that Herculaneum and Pompeii simply give us a moment of ordinary time to look at, whereby we will see objects as they were being used in day-to-day life, neatly suspended, preserved in aspect in these spaces. But of course, life isn't so simple. In addition to the chaos that surrounded these cities' final hours, there's also a whole range of archaeological factors that have served to transform and move objects around. This, in turn, has been quite important when we've been thinking about how to actually present the archaeological stories alongside the fine art vision. How do we actually present objects? How do we select objects for presentation? And how do we put them alongside the walls that have inspired so many artistic developments in their own right? So what we've not done is sought any particularly pure archaeological approach to doing this. What we've done rather is to see an opportunity in the possibilities that this project allows us to engage more closely in the story of the artistic schema, the interpretation of movement through space, but also in ways of looking more closely and understanding in more detail individual objects. And so those have been parts of our dialogue. But the other thing that I think has been extremely important to us has been to employ, or to rather exploit, some of the methods that we use archaeologically for the study of space and study of objects for its artistic potential too. So one of the things I was very anxious to see happen with the project was the different forms of digital recording we would use, both to manage the spaces as exhibition spaces, but also to record them for their artistic development, could be used as part of an analytical process too, aiding and advancing archaeological research into those elements. And so it is that we're actually seeking to exploit the different types of scans that are used, both for more conventional archaeological research, but also as artistic steps in their own right. When you actually see a digital cloud of data generated by laser scanning, when you see objects that have been 3D modelled and have then been adapted, presented in different materials, in different colours, then you start to see the artistic potential of the digital recording process. And that's something else that we found very important in this discussion. My role here, working along with Dr. Teo Ravasi, is also to explore further, using the resources that we're acquiring through this complex digital survey and through our archive analysis aspects of the history of these two sites, particularly themes such as the extraordinary way that the Trojan cycle paintings in the House of the Cryptoporticus would have been experienced by visitors to that house when it was in full use, and to look at the last minutes, seconds really, of the wonderful house of the beautiful courtyard at Herculaneum, where we can see what happens when heat meets art, when we can see in the way in which the wall plaster has been transformed through exposure to heat, just how the anatomy of devastation on this building would have taken place in the city's final moments. Ultimately, for me as an archaeologist, all this has involved certain challenges. It's not just the pleasure of working with colleagues in other disciplines, that's something archaeologists tend to take to quite naturally, but it's also that sense of being in these wonderful cities that have benefited so much from recent work, the work of the Herculaneum Conservation Trust, the work of the Great Pompeii Project. They are remarkable places, even for the most seasoned archaeologist. And there is a tremendous temptation when one has this privileged behind-the-scenes access to these sites and their artefacts to want to pursue the archaeological stories. And it's been quite interesting on occasion while we've been working together that there have been objects that have spoken to Catrin and her vision in a very particular way, but they're not necessarily the objects that I would have sought out, because I might be more attracted to exceptionally well-preserved examples of familiar objects. Sometimes the story of the destruction and transformation of these objects has been what's spoken more powerfully to Catrin. Either way, I think we've learned a great deal from our exchanges. I've certainly benefited enormously, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank not only Catrin for putting this vision together, not only the rest of the team in Newcastle, but also our fantastic colleagues in Herculaneum and Pompeii for making it all possible.